Oh, Paper Mario. I could write an entire book on how dear you are to me, then write an entire sequel about the tragedy of your downfall. I ain't kidding either. I've already made multiple videos on the subject. In fact, this little video right here, The Problem with Paper Mario, collaborating with Noggin got my foot in the proverbial YouTube door, netting me a couple thousand subscribers, but The Problem with Paper Mario was my first video to catch on all by itself. It was the one that really got the ball rolling, and from there, my channel grew into what it is today. How funny that Paper Mario now brings me so much sadness, yet it's one of the major reasons I've seen success on YouTube. I can't honestly say I ever imagined I would so greatly benefit from one of my favorite series effectively dying. But a lot of people watched that video, and judging by the general response, it's because it really resonated with them. I was only giving voice to my own feelings, not even sure at the time if there were like that many people out there who felt as strongly as I did, but as it turns out, there were at least a couple 100,000 of them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time rehashing my feelings on Color Splash or recapping the series' troubled history. I'll stick links to my Paper Mario related videos down in the description in case you missed them. But we all know what happened to the series. We all remember the whole Color Splash debacle, and I know you might be one of those folks who thought the fans overreacted to the announcement, or you thought Color Splash was good enough, or whatever. I know there are some strong opinions on both sides. Frankly, I've never understood the idea that just because the game wasn't purely terrible, it means we have no right to complain. I'd say taking an incredible series and turning it into something that's only okay is still quite a bad thing and a perfectly reasonable thing to still be upset over, but trying not to go there. We're not arguing today. Regardless of where you stand, there seems to be one thing that's almost unanimous. At least from my perspective, it seems like even the biggest Color Splash supporters still wish the series would go back. Even people who loved the game generally still think the old games were better. If you don't feel that way, I'm sorry, but that's the opinion I see 99.9% of the time. So I'm going to assume we're entering this discussion more or less on the same page. We would all like it very much if Nintendo released a new Paper Mario game with a good story and interesting races and partners and a battle system that, let's just say a battle system that everyone can agree is good. So then, all that said, the question we've probably all got on our minds right now is this. Is there any chance at all that Paper Mario could return to its roots? Is there a chance that Nintendo could give us a true Paper Mario 3? If I look at nothing but the hard facts, at the games that have been released and the Paper Mario related things that have been said and done by Nintendo and its employees, my answer is don't count on it. Like, you can never count anything out completely, but I'm like 99% sure it's a no. You see, according to legend, the team at Intelligent Systems was once hard at work creating a Paper Mario game for the 3DS. This game would be the series' magnum opus, the triumphant return to Paper Mario's roots after the still excellent in ways but largely disappointing Super Paper Mario. Yes, it was a bright and exciting time for Intelligent Systems. That was until the darkness came. One day, the evil Shigeru Miyamoto burst into the room and said, "This game looks too good. Take out the story, take out the partners, make every character a toad, make it bland and boring, and remove all incentive for battling, thus rendering combat worthless." And the poor employees at Intelligent Systems complied, for the Dark Lord Shiggy is a cruel and powerful wizard and can turn them into newts or curse their families or garnish their salaries. And thus, Nintendo delivered unto us the cursed game that is Paper Mario Sticker Star. Though actually, record scratch sound, this isn't exactly accurate. Or at least it's not the whole story, and it's an oversimplification. See, it's no secret that Shigeru Miyamoto has something against stories, and one could argue he also has something against depth in a game. He's all about simple fun. He created Mario, he created Zelda, he's a genius game designer, and as such, his word carries a lot of weight at Nintendo. We've seen many reports of him putting his foot down over certain elements of certain games, and while this has often resulted in way better games, it's also turned out some less favorable results. A good example of his influence and also of his dislike of any sort of real story in a Mario game is New Super Mario Bros. U. His instructions for setting the scene in that game were just, put a cake, and then there's Bowser, the end. I'm paraphrasing here, naturally. So yes, he has made a lot of decisions that I can't exactly say were wise from my own perspective, and he did step in and call some shots regarding Sticker Star. But there's so much more to it. I'm also linking a video down in the description called Why Paper Mario Changed by SuperMarioT. This is a family-friendly channel, so I've got to give a language warning, but this is a really excellent video that digs into this whole mess and uncovers some very interesting stuff. I highly suggest giving it a watch, but the long and short of it is this. Paper Mario games have have been helmed by a number of folks over the years. Ryota Kaware was responsible for the first 3 Paper Marios, and he's basically the guy we all really wish was still in charge. Kensuke Tanabe took over at some point, and judging by a number of interviews, it seems that this is the guy who's responsible for a lot of the stuff we don't like about Sticker Star and Color Splash. There's a lot of evidence, but one very large no-no he made was specifically gearing Color Splash towards 7 to 10-year-olds. Yep. Just forget Paper Mario's pre-existing audience, or even just the majority of Nintendo's audience. He wanted to make a game for kids. He went on record saying that. Shigeru Miyamoto may have told the guys at Intelligent Systems that he didn't want the 3DS Paper Mario to look so much like Thousand Year Door. He may have told them that he wanted the game to only use Mushroom Kingdom races from the early games. But he did not say, make them all Toads, or make battling worthless, nor did he order the team to implement a great number of things that we thought were wrong with the game. Tanabe is the guy who made all that happen. At least that's the way it looks. Basically, Shiggy isn't the only guy to blame here. Risa Tabata also took a lot of heat for her interview with GameXplain, where she seemingly confirmed what a lot of us were fearing, that Nintendo just didn't want to have 2 Mario RPG series running concurrently. She said some other stuff too, and a lot of people got really mad at her. Her words even coaxed an entire video out of me. But at the end of the day, it sounds like she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She had nothing to do with Paper Mario before Color Splash. She really didn't know much about the series, and it's possible that not everything she said mirrored Nintendo's own feelings on Paper Mario. Again, it's all in that video. If you're really interested in this whole thing, you'll love it. So while the series might not have necessarily changed for the worse for the exact reasons we all thought, there's no denying that it did change. And despite the idea that maybe we can take Risa Tabata's words about only having 1 Mario RPG with a tiny grain of salt, the fact remains that none of this looks good. Only about 10% of the original Paper Mario staff moved on to Sticker Star, possibly even less for Color Splash, and the series is in the hands of people who obviously aren't the slightest bit interested in pleasing Paper Mario's fans. They're in this weird thing that, from my own admittedly outsider perspective, seems very foolish in a business sense, where they have customers that they're just not interested in pleasing. They have something that people want, but they want other people to want it? Or they're somehow serving the game itself without caring what customers think? I really don't know. Frankly, it's confusing. As a company that likes to make money, it's just a very confusing thing to do. That's like if Samsung randomly decided to make their next Galaxy phone an old-style rotary phone, because they had some specific idea of how they wanted it to be aesthetically, completely ignoring the fact that none of their established customers wanted that. And then the Galaxy after that one was the same thing, just improved. And everyone was left scratching their heads, being like, yeah, this is technically better, but it's still a rotary phone. It's still not that product that we loved, that you used to make, and you just don't anymore. Yeah, it's a free market. Samsung is completely allowed to make that product the exact way they want, and we are perfectly allowed to just not buy it and not give them our money and just be like, all right, fine. Because really, not listening is at the core of this issue. That's what makes it feel like Paper Mario's not gonna change. There was such a huge backlash against Sticker Star that continuing Color Splash in the same style has to mean that they just didn't see and or care about that backlash one single bit. For whatever reason, I simply can't comprehend they chose to stick to their guns. Was it artistic integrity? They wanted to make the game they wanted to make? Customers be darned? Was it greed? They thought that a scant few million Paper Mario fans weren't enough, and they wanted to tap into that elusive, grass is greener, potentially bigger other crowd? I don't know. And the fact that it's so confusing is what makes it feel like it can't change for the better. If they were willing to listen or do what made sense, wouldn't they have done it by now? There's a tiny part of me that feels like Color Splash offered something of a silver lining because yes, it had an even worse and more gimmicky battle system, in my opinion, and it still lacked a lot of what Paper Mario fans loved about the first 2 or 3 games. But in some ways, it felt like a step in the right direction. The locales were more interesting, the stories and characters were a little better, it offered at least some tiny incentive to battle. The optimist in me thinks, what if they did see our response, and they just saw it a little too late to make huge changes, and a lot of this stuff was crammed in later in development as a way to smooth things over with us? I specifically remember some of the treehousers at E3 trying really hard to play up the idea that the game had great, unique characters. Like, do you remember that? They just kept saying it over and over again while they were playing the game. Unique characters. Wow, look at these unique characters, guys. Maybe that was because of an order that came from one of the upper-ups who finally discovered that their game didn't really line up with their fans' wants and was trying to do some damage control? But alas, that is some pretty heavy speculating. That's one tiny theory going up against a great big pile of evidence saying the Paper Mario you want is completely gone, it ain't ever coming back, and the best you can ever hope for is more mildly fun adventure games with even more focus on paper. So that's why, based only on the hard data surrounding the series, it's hard for me to imagine that things will turn around. And it's like I said in the problem of Paper Mario, I don't want to hold on to hope anymore. Eventually you reach a point where holding on to hope is exhausting. It's much easier to just say no, the thing I want isn't happening, I should just stop giving it my energy and move on. But the hard Paper Mario data is not all we have right now. A wild card has been thrown into the mix, and that wild card is a little thing called the Switch. Nintendo's changed, and we all know it. Switch era Nintendo is not the same as Wii U era Nintendo. A lot of the problems they had back then, well, those problems seem to have just been plain old fixed. The difference is in the Switch. It's in the games they're developing. It's in their marketing. It's everything. I could talk about it all day, and I have, but I won't right now. We know things are different. And there's no single thing that changed the whole company. It comes down to a lot of different elements like restructuring, leadership changes, philosophy changes, the general lessons learned from the Wii U, and let's give Wii U era Nintendo some credit. It is some of the stuff they did during that time too. A lot of the good stuff happening now is because of decisions made back then. Problem is, while they've certainly started making more decisions that mesh with us fans and turning out more ambitious, creative games that we want to play, unfortunately, we can't be certain if they necessarily started listening, per se. Maybe they began looking at what their fans were begging for, but maybe they just got a better idea of what the fans might want all on their own. So we don't know for sure. But in the case of Paper Mario, we can certainly keep our fingers crossed that it's the former. One very big reason things have changed for the better at Nintendo, and probably the main example of how there might still be a glimmer of hope for Paper Mario, is this guy right here. Yoshiaki Koizumi, who we've been seeing in most Nintendo presentations since 2017's Switch event. This guy is the anti-Shiggy. He loves stories. He understands that a good story can help us engage with characters and game worlds on a much deeper level. And thank this man, because he's been fighting Miyamoto about this for years. Most of the good stories in Mario games happened despite Miyamoto. They happened because Koizumi fought for them and even slipped them in under Miyamoto's nose. The Rosalina backstory in Super Mario Galaxy, the thing that basically makes Galaxy have a good story, or Majora's Mask, the time mechanic and all the interesting story elements and characters and cool dark stuff, or Link's Awakening's entire concept with the dream and the island and everything, all Koizumi. He truly is the unsung hero of Nintendo. I'd throw this man a parade if I could. If Miyamoto is simplicity and fun, Koizumi is creativity and depth of both story and character. I mean, can you imagine a world where Majora's Mask didn't happen, and Galaxy 1's story was just as shallow as Galaxy 2's, and Link's Awakening was just a portable rehash of Link to the Past without any of the story elements that Koizumi literally snuck into the game? They specifically told him not to give it a good story, and he snuck story stuff in anyway. I'm not even joking, look it up. He's what made those games fan favorites. He's solely responsible for some of Nintendo's most creative projects. So why am I going on about him so much? Well, he recently moved up in the company. According to Wikipedia, in September 2015, he became Deputy General Manager of the newly formed Entertainment Planning and Development Division. That's some of that restructuring and leadership changing I was talking about. He also served as General Producer of the Switch. Basically, he's one of the big guys now, one of the dudes most responsible for running the company and developing its games. And let's take a look at a game that Nintendo recently released, a little game called Super Mario Odyssey, the most creative 3D Mario ever with, in my opinion, the best story created not for the casual audience, but on record specifically for the core Mario fans. Well, gee, I wonder who was the lead producer for this game. Oh, look at that, Yoshiaki Koizumi. Other than offering advice, Miyamoto had very little to do with the game. Koizumi and director Kenta Motokura and the rest of the team were all allowed to go crazy, to be as creative and wild as they wanted, and the result was, in my opinion, just about the best ding-dang Mario we could ask for. And I'm not necessarily trying to suggest that Paper Mario still has a chance because of Koizumi directly. No, I mean, hey, for all I know that's the case, but more I'm trying to highlight the change in Nintendo's mindset, the one I've already gone on and on about in previous videos. After stagnating for a time in the wake of the casual craze, they've become much more willing to change things up creatively and to pass creative freedom around more freely. They let Koizumi and the Mario team make the Mario they wanted to make. In regard to Breath of the Wild, they basically told Aonuma, do whatever you want, which resulted in the single biggest shakeup in series history. They let a team of younger developers make a game about squids that shoot each other with ink that had nothing to do with any pre-existing Nintendo franchise, and it was probably more successful than anyone at the company could have ever hoped. All at once, they created a completely new big-name franchise, something that Nintendo does pretty infrequently. Over the last few years, Nintendo's been giving its game developers more freedom, and it's been paying off amazingly. And I believe it's because with that freedom, the developers have been really and truly trying to consider what real, actual Nintendo fans might want to play. They're not making entire games based on Miyamoto's flights of fancy. They're not making games in some weird, self-serving way where the gimmick is the most important thing and they don't care about any audience but the casual one or some other one that may or may not exist. They're going, you know, I think this is something our current fans right now would love. And they're right. And obviously, this is exactly the kind of attitude that needs to return to the Paper Mario series. I don't know if Kensuke Tanabe has a permanent stranglehold on it now, or if there's just no way any more Paper Marios will be made without him or what. But maybe, just maybe, it's at least possible that someday Nintendo will be like, we should make another Paper Mario game, and Tanabe will be doing something else, and they'll give the role of director or lead producer to just the right person, because hey, they're trusting new people now, they're taking new approaches to development, let's let this person do whatever they want, and maybe that person has listened, they have heard the pained cries of the masses, or maybe that person themselves misses the old games too, and just maybe that person will make the kind of Paper Mario we've been dreaming about for so many years now. Because the last little thing we've got on our side, the last little piece of something that might potentially help in some small way, is this. That's right, these downvote bars. Oof, that's a bad one. And of course, the millions and millions of videos about how upset people were about Color Splash. And that's not counting forum posts and articles and stuff like that. I mean, all over the internet, people were losing their minds about Color Splash. They were gnashing their teeth and tearing their robes. They made it very clear that this was not the kind of Paper Mario game they wanted to play. This was Sticker Star 2, and they hated Sticker Star. As we've established, in the past, Nintendo has not been keen on listening to their fans. In fact, the only instance where we've got solid proof of them listening to anyone's thoughts on Paper Mario were when they said that a Club Nintendo survey for Super Paper Mario told them that not even 1% of the people taking it listed the story as something they enjoyed. Yeah, and I don't know if there was a glitch in the mainframe or some kind of silly 90s hacker movie computer virus that messed things up or something, or if maybe for whatever reason only a specific demographic filled out those surveys and that exact demographic didn't care about stories. I really don't know, because just looking at the internet, that survey was obviously not a true representation of the fanbase's opinions. Ask anybody who's ever played those old games. Basically everyone cares about Paper Mario's story. That's why we've been so upset about all this. Really upset. Very visibly upset. And I'm getting back into the wild speculation thing. This could very easily not happen, but let's just imagine for a moment that what I said earlier happens. One or more of Nintendo's recent changes leads to a change in leadership on the next Paper Mario game. Nintendo hasn't listened in the past, but imagine that somewhere in the company, maybe it's someone who can make big decisions like Koizumi, or maybe it's someone who's been put in charge of this hypothetical new Paper Mario. All they would have to do is take one teeny, tiny, cursory glance at the internet to see how Color Splash was received. Some controversies take some digging to really get to the bottom of. Sticker Star, I could see that one slipping under the radar. It sold pretty well, and the disappointment was strong and basically unanimous, but not necessarily big. But the Color Splash outrage was very big and very loud. You couldn't possibly miss it. Even if you think people were overreacting, if you think it was all really rash and immature or whatever, I must say, this is 1,000 times more likely to be seen by someone who matters than a handful of cautiously optimistic posts on a Mario forum somewhere, made by people who have some concerns, but don't want to judge the game too harshly before they've had a chance to play it. No, this crazy outrage, coupled with the game's abysmal sales, that right there sends a message. There's always the risk that the low sales just make Nintendo go, I guess no one likes Paper Mario anymore. But again, all it takes is the tiniest look to see exactly why the game did so badly. Sales figures often leave Nintendo guessing, but this time, no guessing is needed. I'm still not getting my hopes up for another true Paper Mario game. I'm still not going to devote a lot of my energy to thinking about it and wishing for it to happen, because I spent the last of that energy on Color Splash. To me, a sequel to Thousand Year Door still feels like a pipe dream. But there is one tiny little part of me that believes it's at least the tiniest bit possible. I mean, Nintendo's done a lot of stuff recently that a few years ago I would have thought was impossible. But they've changed. A lot. So at the very least, there's that minuscule little glimmer of hope. That last ember that no matter how much I try to smother it, it just won't go out. What about you? Have you snuffed out that ember, or are you still wishing hard for Paper Mario to make its big return on the Switch or a future platform? Let me know in the comments, and if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go check the news. Whoa, they just announced Thousand Year Door 2! It's the biggest and most epic Paper Mario ever! I'm just kidding. That's not true. I got you, though. Alright, I'll see you later. Oh my gosh, this time Nintendo really announced a new Paper Mario, and it's an RPG, and it's got partners, and it's coming this year, and I got you again, haha. Yeah, I see that look on your face. I know you fell for it. Whoa, no, guys, for real this time, you'll never believe what— This video was brought to you in part by my top patrons, who, by complete coincidence, also happen to be some of the most objectively perfect people on the planet. If you'd like to support the channel, head over to my Patreon page, where you can get behind-the-scenes updates on what I'm working on for as little as $1 a month. See ya! I mean, look at them. They're just perfect. You literally don't get better people than that.